Episode 275, When Faith Feels Different in Marriage, with Kristen Smith.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
In this episode, Heather sits down with Coach Kristen Smith to talk about one of the hardest realities many faithful women face: navigating a marriage where their spouse's relationship with faith looks different than their own. Kristen shares her own story of struggling with resentment, sadness, anxiety, and disconnection as her husband gradually stepped away from church activity. Through her healing journey, Kristen discovered that the real miracle wasn't changing her husband, it was changing her focus. Together, Heather and Kristen explore how unmet expectations, nervous system dysregulation, negative thought patterns, and unresolved emotions can keep women stuck in chronic irritation and pain. They also talk about how mindset shifts, physical healing, gut health, and emotional awareness can help women let go of resentment, feel safer in their relationships, and create more joy in their lives. This conversation is for any woman who feels emotionally exhausted, spiritually lonely, or stuck in resentment, and is ready to begin healing from the inside out. Please enjoy.
Hey, everybody. I am so happy to be here. I'm coming to you guys from my grandmother's house. I'm in a cute little bedroom at my grandma's house. It's her 94th birthday today. And she does listen to this podcast. So Grandma, I know this is later. It's past your birthday, but I want to tell you how much I love you. And I'm so glad that I get to be with you today and so many other times during the year. But anyway, happy birthday, Grandma. Belated. I am joined today by Coach Kristen Smith. Hi, Kristen. How you doing?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being with me. And Kristen was on a call with in our coaching community a couple weeks ago, and it was just so fun to connect and see, like, we all have different views and different perspectives of things, but also to see places where we're aligned in things and get to have, I don't know, we just get to have good conversations. But we're gonna have a really great one today. I'm really excited about it. Kristen, before we get started, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yes. So my name is Kristen Smith, and I am a relationship coach and gut health specialist. So I've been coaching people on gut health for about 5 years now, and it's been just in the last couple of years that I went in and did my life coach certification. And because of just the life experiences that I have, which we'll talk about a little bit today, I love helping people learn how to feel better and just find joy in their life, because I know sometimes that's a little bit hard. At least for me, that was.
The interesting thing I think for many people is, like, our lives feel okay, like it's fine, but we just have no idea that there actually might be something more, and we haven't even thought about that possibility. So I love that you make that available to people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so, like, for me, it was, so my husband and I just celebrated our 5th anniversary this last year. And there was an evening where I've got 4 daughters, 3 of them are married. And then my oldest daughter is pregnant with her 4th child. So I've got 3 beautiful grandbabies, and they all came to my house to help to celebrate our 30th anniversary. There was just a point in that evening where I had to I just sat back and noticed, like, everybody just laughing and giggling and having a good time together. And I was so grateful, and I felt so much joy at that time, being able to be around my family and being able to appreciate the fact that we were all there, we were all getting along, we were all doing something fun together, because it hadn't always been like that. When those 4 girls were growing up, there were a lot of years where I was struggling to find joy in my life. Like, I was a working mom. I was doing all the things. When those girls were ages 8 to 18, right? Like, they were doing sports, we were doing dance, we were doing school. I was helping in church callings. We were just all of the things, right? Like I was constantly telling everybody how busy I was, telling myself how busy I was, and I was like exhausted from trying to do all those things. And at the same time, gradually over the years, my husband had stopped going to church, which was really hard for me to understand because church and the gospel and the things that I had learned at church were frankly like the only things that were keeping me going at the time, right? They were the things that gave me hope and through that whole process. So it was interesting but yeah, I was just struggling. And I think most people from the outside didn't know how much I was struggling, but I found myself crying in the closet a lot. I resorted to taking some anxiety meds from my doctor because there were I knew I was struggling with anxiety and some form of depression, right, at that time. And I resorted to the medication, which has its place. And when I started taking the medication, it helped so that I wasn't crying all the time for no reason. That I felt like it was no reason, right? But I was just in a place where I didn't feel like I was happy. I didn't feel like I was finding the joy that I wanted. And the reason that I went in and decided that I wanted to get my life coach certification and start helping people is because these last 5 years, through my own personal healing journey, I've been able to figure out how to change that. And it's been through a lot of self-development work, physically, emotionally, changing my mindset and learning the tools to be able to go through and do that. And so I love helping other people through that process.
So many people are in or have been in the same position as you where their spouse or somebody that they love leaves the church, and it's a really interesting place to navigate. And I'm grateful that more people are talking about it. First of all, obviously it's an important topic, and that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today too. And I am anxious, a good anxious, not that anxious is bad, but sometimes we relate with that, but I'm anxiously excited for people to be able to get this conversation in their life as well, because I think it is helpful. But I'm really curious, why do so many faithful women whose husbands are questioning their faith kind of experience that chronic irritation or resentment in their life? And I'm assuming that, I guess in asking that question, I'm assuming that was kind of your experience as well.
Absolutely. And that's what I found happened. And I personally think the reason is because things don't turn out the way we expected them to. So I feel like for me, I grew up in an active LDS home, right? My parents from my young childhood, we went to church every week. We, lived the LDS active life. We, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming most everybody that is listening to this knows what that means, right? Like
Yes.
keeping the Sabbath day holy, going to church every Sunday, keeping the word of wisdom, those kind of things, right? Like that's how we lived. My dad worked and my mom stayed home as a stay-at-home mom for the most part. My dad, I think there were times where my dad had more than one job, multiple jobs, and my mom would help him with the extra jobs, right? So there were times when my mom was not actually in the home actually taking care of the kids, but she was actually helping support the family and do those kind of things. But for the most part, we lived that typical dad support, mom, and mom stay home and nurture, right? And which was amazing. I feel like I learned at a young age that I had a testimony of the gospel and a testimony of Jesus Christ, and it wasn't something that I really ever questioned. Did it, and I participated in all the things, and I did all the things because it felt good to me, right? It was just something that felt really good to my heart, and it brought peace to my life, and it brought joy to my life. And my husband and I met at college, and he didn't grow up in the same type of a home. I mean, his parents were amazing. Also, his dad was not a member of the church, though, so they didn't participate necessarily in church every week like we did. They spent time as a family a lot, and they had a lot of family bonding, but they did it sometimes at the cabin or in the mountains or on a boat, like in those kind of things on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my husband and I got married, it was a little bit different. And when I think back of it now, even I think he did compromise. I don't even think compromise is the right word, because I think he did it how I wanted to do it for a long time. Like we got married in the temple. We were both going to church. We were both serving in callings. When we first got married, we taught primary together. As we started having kids, I had callings. He had a few different callings in the church. But I think for me, the expectation, like there was something still missing in that I felt like was supposed to be happening, right? So typically in our home, I was the one that was asking people to say prayers or saying most of the prayers, or I was the one that was initiating family home evening, and I was the one that was trying to more integrate that kind of stuff into our home. And I feel like probably a lot of women feel that way, because I think a lot of times I think it's the wife that does all that stuff, right? But for me, I think there was an expectation because my dad had done more of those things, that he was supposed to be doing more of those things. And in that regard, I think a lot of sadness. And then as the years went by, I think I started to look at him through those eyes of resentment, right? Where it was like, no, I think I treated him in a way that I was expecting him to be different than how he was. And that came across as me not really treating him in a good way. And because of, and it wasn't just me, right? It was both of us, but it just, as he stopped, he kind of gradually moved away from going to church, and I'm still active in doing all the things that I believe that we should be doing. There was a lot of sadness and hurt for me around that, again, because I didn't understand why he didn't believe the same as I did. And then, conversations would be brought up around church history and things. And again, I didn't have the knowledge or know anything about any of that stuff at that time. So I was very defensive in the way we had the conversations. And I think it just led to us avoiding the conversations at that point, right? And so there were a lot of years where there was just a lot of disconnect and a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, and a lot of expectations that weren't being met for both of us. And so I think that's the main reason, in my opinion, that probably I feel like there are other people that can relate to that, especially, and it's not just for me, obviously it was in our marriage, right? My husband and I having those differences in opinions and beliefs, but I think it happens a lot with children who, like you said, leave the church, or parents or siblings that have different ideas and different beliefs around. And a lot of times it might be just that they just have questions and they don't understand why we're being taught to do the things that we're doing. And I think that's what I'm finding now, that I've learned some of the tools to get rid of the resentment that we've had. Our conversations are a lot deeper and a lot more, I think we're both feeling more safe in the with each other to share how we really feel, and the other person not getting upset about it. So we're able to actually have deeper and more meaningful conversations around, why does the church teach us to do these things? Why are we doing these things, right? And because of that, for me, I've even realized, I finally started listening to the things that he was saying. And some of his points are valid, right? Okay, I don't fully understand why either, but interesting enough, as I've gone through my own process with this, I do believe that God answers prayers, and anytime that I've personally had a question, I feel like God's answering those questions. So it's been an amazing and beautiful process these last several years. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It has created a different dynamic, and just the awareness that I have around the way that the things that we had so many conversations over those years, or arguments and fights over the years, where both of us said things that we didn't mean, right? And so then when that happens, when you're in an argument and you're saying things that you don't mean, it causes something in our physical body, right? That's where our nervous systems really do feel threatened, and they don't feel safe. And so when in future conversations, when something similar like that happens, then there is a scientific aspect around our body really trying to keep us safe and either shut down or explode, right? And so once that happens, and it happens on multiple occasions, then it's really, really hard to get out of that pattern of being triggered when trying in order to find that, right? And so that is what causes us to not feel safe around in having those conversations. And again, whether it's a spouse or a sibling or or a child who is expressing that they have concerns or questions, and it's different than what I specifically understand or believe. When that's happened over and over again, it automatically puts you in defense mode. So you automatically want to argue that you're right rather than actually sit back and listen to the concerns that the other person's having. Because in most cases, like this is what I'm learning, is that it's not about being right or wrong, really. Right? None of us, we all think differently, and that is purpose. Like, it's designed that way. We're not all the same on purpose. It reminds me, so my husband and I actually built this house where we live right now a couple years ago. And when we moved here, when we moved in, we actually built it ourselves. So when we moved in, there's a lot of projects that weren't finished. And so the master bathroom wasn't finished, and we weren't able to shower in the master bathroom for like a year and a half after we lived here. And so we were showering in the other main bath, and we bought one of those shower caddies that hangs on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that you put shampoo and everything in, right? So every time I would take a shower, I'd try to fit there are two little hooks on the side, and I would try to fit my razor on the one hook. And there's a little triangle hole on my razor, but the hook is like a square shape. So every time I would try to hang it on it, it doesn't fit very well. And I'd like balance it on there, and then it would fall off, and I'd have to do it 3 or 4 times. And probably about, 6 to 9 months after we'd lived here, I got in the shower one day, and the razor was actually laying on the 2 hooks this direction instead. So I was always trying to hang it this way, but it was laying on it this way. So it must have fallen down. And my husband probably got in the shower, and he just picked it up and set it on the 2 this way. And I looked at it and I was like, that's probably how it's supposed to work, right? Like, that's probably but my brain, I'm not even kidding. Like, I literally would have kept doing it the other way for the rest of my life, because it did not even occur to me that there was a different way and an easier way to do it. But my husband's just like, oh, here, do it this way. You right? And it was interesting to me that day, because I feel like that was one of the, one really small example of me being aware of the fact that he thinks different than I do. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? Like, what other conversations are we having, and what other things is he doing that's different than what I do? And instead of getting threatened by the fact that he's questioning or asking me to do, trying to show me something different, I would get so threatened. I'm so crazy. Like, I leave the lights on, and I forget to lock the doors, and I run out of gas in my car. Like, I do that. My brain just does not think about those kind of things. And he would say, he would bring up, did you lock the door? He would always say, every time I go anywhere, did you lock the door? Did you lock the door? And it got annoying. Like, I'd get annoyed. Like, it got to the point after years and years and years of this happening that when he would ask me if I'd lock the door, I'd be so irritated with him. Like, I'd be like, stop telling me that I'm, like, you're always pointing out everything that I'm doing wrong. Which in reality, that's not what he was doing. He was just trying to keep me safe because he cares about me, right? And so one of the things that I've really worked on the last couple of years, and some of the tools that I've learned, is to go in and repattern the brain, repattern my mind, so that I'm understanding that when he's questioning me and asking me and pointing out things that maybe I didn't didn't do the same way he did it, that it doesn't trigger me anymore. I have an awareness, and I'm more curious, and I'm like, oh, he's probably saying that because he thinks different than I do. And that's something that he's focusing on, and he's wanting to be better. And again, he's trying to keep me safe because he cares about me. He's not trying to point out what I'm doing wrong. He's just trying to help me.
Mm-hmm. Which is so fascinating, because like, that's what he's doing, but that's also what your brain's trying to do, right? Your brain is trying to keep you safe. So it thinks it needs to tell you this story that
Yes,
he's questioning you. So it's like the same thing, but happening on different sides, right? And the more valid one is what your husband is saying, right? Like, your brain, you can't usually trust what your brain is. Oftentimes you can't trust what your brain is trying to tell you. So
yeah. No, that's a good point, because I think that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So interesting.
So a lot of the tools that I've learned and that I teach people when I'm coaching them is because I feel like it was really hard all those years when you're in that pattern, and your brain is, and your body is trying to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to understand and know how to change it.
Yeah.
And so learning the tools and being able to practice and do it a little bit differently, so that you can repattern the way that you think and repattern the things in your brain, actually really can release the resentment and release the triggers and release all the negative emotions that you've possibly been holding on to for years, right? So, yeah.
Kristen, you mentioned some of the tools a little, like you've mentioned using tools to help you navigate this process. And I know you work closely with women who are navigating the same dynamic. Maybe you could just speak to a couple of those tools that you have found helpful for you and for them as you're trying to work through this, go on this journey of discovery.
So I remember, again, all those years, like I was struggling and I was having a hard time. And in reality, I blamed a lot of it on him, right? Like in my head, it was like I
Of
felt like
course.
he should be doing more things as far as church and gospel was concerned. And mind you, like he is an amazing husband. Like he takes care of all the stuff. Like he cooks, he cleans, he goes to the grocery store, he fills up my car with gas, he does all the things. He's an amazing dad. He was always driving kids around. I mean, we even had a specific 5-year period where, because my career was taking off and doing really well, he actually quit his job and he stayed home doing all the Mr. Mom things for 5 years, doing everything with the kids. So he's amazing in that regard, but still in my head, because he wasn't initiating family prayers and he wasn't participating and going to church with me all the time, and all those things that I felt like we were supposed to be doing according to the with, there was still this aspect in my mind where I just felt like he wasn't doing it right. And so I was praying, I was always praying that his heart would change and he would understand how important the gospel was. And you probably remember that talk that President Nelson gave where he talked about how we could seek and expect miracles. And at that point, I actually bought this necklace that says expect miracles on it. And I wore it all the time, like it was a reminder that I'm like, I know that I can expect miracles. And there were several times where I attended the temple and I had spiritual experiences where I just really felt the Holy Ghost telling me that I just needed to be patient, right? Like it would be fine and everything would work out. And again, in my mind, that was his heart would be softened and he was going to be changed. Well, there was one time that I specifically remember where we'd had an argument or something, and I was in my closet. I found myself on the floor, curled up in a ball, crying, which was a typical event. Like that happened frequently. And I remember I was holding onto this necklace, and I was again praying that he would change. And I literally had a voice in my head that said, a small voice, right? That said, "You're praying for the wrong miracle." And it was interesting because I knew exactly what that meant. Like I had been working on this personal growth myself for a little bit with a coach, like helping me work on learning these tools. And I knew that it was me that needed to change, right? I knew that it was the focus in my life. So again, President Nelson's, my favorite quote is, "The joy you feel has little to do with the circumstances of your life and everything to do with the focus of your life." And I had that quote, a giant version of it, hanging in my living room for years and years and years. And again, I felt like I was doing all the right things and I was focusing on Christ and that was like what I was supposed to do. But at that moment, when I heard that small voice tell me that I was praying for the wrong miracle, I knew it was because my focus wasn't on all the good things, right? My focus needed to change and my focus needed to be positive. I needed to focus on the positive things. And since then, like I've gone through a lot of trainings and I've learned a lot of things around, like specifically the words that we use, like inside our head and out loud. So focusing on what you want has a lot to do with the words that we use. So for instance, like for my marriage and my relationship with my husband, I was focusing on the fact that I didn't want to fight. But our subconscious brain, so again, a little bit of science in the background, right? Our subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between the knots. When you say when I don't want something or I not wanting something, it doesn't know that. It's still focusing on that thing. So I'm focusing on not wanting to fight with my husband, and I'm still fighting with my husband over and over and over again. And I realized I needed to focus on having a healthy relationship, right? And you can apply this in every area of life. So let's say like in the fitness world, if I want to lose weight, right? A lot of us are like, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. Well, my subconscious brain is still focused on weight when I'm focused on wanting to lose weight, right? So instead, I realized that I needed to reframe the way that I was thinking about things and the things that I was saying out loud. And I'd say, it's better to say, I want to be healthy and happy. I want to find joy in my life. I want to, and those kind of things. And there was one point where I was going to the gym. I finally was getting up and going to the gym, and was hard. I've never been an exercise person. Like I don't like exercise. It's not fun. I didn't feel better when I was doing it. I knew I was supposed to, right? So I would force myself sometimes to do it. But I was at the gym one day and I'd been learning about this concept of changing the way that I was using my words. And I'm in the middle of this workout and it's hard and I'm sweating and I don't want to do it. And I, look over at the girl next to me. I'm like, this is killing me. This is literally killing me. And I realize what I'm saying, right? So I'm like, what is my body really going to be focused on when I'm telling it that it's going to be killing me, right? It's not going to be focused on anything good. So the girl that was at the gym that day that was coaching, I was telling her this story. And so I told her, I was like, I'm going to start focusing on, I'm going to change the words that I'm using. And I'm going to say, this is making me stronger. This is making me stronger. This is making me stronger. And a couple weeks later, I did that. And I started saying that in my mind instead. And a couple weeks later, she comes up to me and she says, have you been doing that thing we were talking about where you were talking about it making you stronger instead of killing you? And I was like, yeah, I have. And she's like, I've noticed a difference. I think you're showing up different than you were before when you were using, just by changing the way that you were thinking about it, right? So I'm like, it's really interesting how that works, but it literally is like that in any situation. And so I'm like, that was one of the first steps for me, was just like paying attention to the words that I was using, paying attention to what I was focused on. And again, focusing on the good things that my husband was doing in our relationship, right? Again, he's an amazing guy and he was doing all these things that were good and trying to take care of me and our girls and doing all these things. And I wasn't appreciating it. I wasn't grateful. I was just focused on the fact that there was this specific area where he wasn't doing what I thought he should be doing. And that's where my focus had been for years. And so it was about changing that focus and learning from him, like we talked about before, right? Realizing that he had a lot of good things that I could learn from him.
I really appreciate that perspective, just reframing, looking at it differently. The thing that came to my mind when you said I just was so focused, I didn't want to fight in my marriage. I wanted to have a happy marriage. And there's plenty of people who don't fight in their marriage and don't have a happy marriage either, right? The focus is just, we're not going to fight, and they're not fighting, but they're still not happy. And so, yes, you could continue to focus on that. And even if you did fight less, it didn't mean that you were going to have a happy marriage. Like the focus gets to be on creating the happy marriage, not the opposite. So I think that's a really great example and so applicable in every avenue of our life, really.
Yeah. And again, back to the quote, President Nelson, with the circumstances, the joy you feel has little to do with the circumstances of your life and everything to do with the focus of your life. Again, I felt like I understood that. I felt like I needed to focus on Christ is what I understood it as, which I do believe is true. But I don't think at that time I understood what that meant. I don't think I was trying to read my scriptures. I was trying to go to church. I was trying to teach my kids about the gospel. But in reality, if I'm focusing on Christ, what is it that Christ is teaching me? He's teaching me to focus on the good. Like, again, President Nelson, he's got all these good, think celestial. What do you think he means when he says think celestial or expect miracles, right? He's telling us to focus on the positive, focus on the good things, stop focusing on the negative things. And when we can focus on all those things and pay attention to the words we're using, then that's what we get in our life. If we focus on the good, we recognize the good and good things come into our life. But when we focus on the negative things happen more often. It's also the energy that we're projecting, right?
Right. Like the older I get, the more I believe in manifesting, right? Like what we put out into the world is really what we create. I know to some people that's really woo-woo, but there is something to it. Anyway,
Yeah. And I love the aspect of manifestation now. Like, I don't think I understood it years ago, but now that I have been learning about that, and again, changing the way that I'm thinking and the words that I'm using, it happens faster and faster. And I mean, just like I was saying before, even with my questions around why we're taught specific things in the church and why we do specific things and the focusing on the things that I want, I really do feel like in my life, when I am focused on what I want and I have questions even concerning gospel topics, and I really dig in and I start to learn about it and I pray about it and I do all these things, like literally the next day, I'll listen to a podcast or open the scriptures or do something and there it is, right? Like I even had, just a couple weeks ago, I was the church, my church building is just around the corner from my house. So I was walking to church, and as I was walking to church, I was thinking about a specific topic that I had been wondering about. And I just thought, I need to learn more about this topic. I literally walked 10 more minutes. I sit down in sacrament meeting. The first guy gets up to speak, and he says, we're going to talk about this topic today. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's crazy.
There's been a couple books that I'm like, I probably should contact this author and say, you're welcome, because I'm the reason why you got the inspiration to write this book. Because I feel like I manifested them receiving whatever direction they needed to write that, because I was searching for something and then their book comes about. So anyway, I think that's so funny. So true. So true. Okay, so we talked a little bit about mindset, right? Like shifting our focus, looking at, and I guess I look at that as kind of a mindset side of it when we look at something differently. Let's talk a little bit about how the nervous system comes into play here. How can tending to our nervous system help to in that situation, it kind of to make us feel more physically calm and create more steadiness in our lives when we're navigating situations like that?
Oh my goodness, this was like one of the key things in my experience, and really when I look back, it was like the first thing that started my health journey and this journey of helping my relationship with my husband be better, is that listening to my body, right? So all those years, again, I was busy. We were doing all the things with all the kids and the mom, I was working from home, which was amazing, by the way. Like even before COVID, I had the opportunity to be able to work from home, and I feel so blessed to be able to do that, because I always wanted to be a mom, but I also enjoyed having a career. And because I was able to work from home, I was able to do both. And I was able to coordinate both. But it was also a double-edged sword, because when you work from home, it's like always on your mind. And it gave me the flexibility to be able to, when my kids were little, right? Like I'd be able to go read with the first graders at the elementary school, or was helping with the PTA, or if I had a friend that wanted to walk, and we'd walk and talk and do those kind of things. Like it was great to have that flexibility, but I still had to get my work done. So there were a lot of times where I would find myself in, late at night trying to finish up work that I hadn't done during the day. And the quality, that my husband and I had tried to spend time together. So we'd sit in our bed with the TV on. Have my laptop working away, trying to do my stuff. He's next to me snoring, right? That was like quality time. That was the quality time that we were spending together. And there was even one morning I remember where it was summer, and I was excited that I didn't have to get the kids up for school. And so I was still in bed trying to sleep. And my 8-year-old daughter comes jumping, like running in my room, jumping on my bed. She's poking at me. Wake up, Mom. Wake up, Mom. And I wasn't having it. I was mad. I was irritated, right? Like, no, I'm sleeping. So I was like, get out of my room, like yelling at her. And I specifically remember the look in her eyes, because she was so confused. And she was just like, but Mom, it's my birthday. And I felt like the worst mom in the world at that time. I'm sure there are a lot of people that can relate to something like that, right? And I felt awful. But I was exhausted. Like I was bouncing between all the things, my mentality and, but with everything that was going on in the marriage, like I was tired, I was exhausted, I didn't feel good. I knew that I had gut issues because I had stomach aches and heartburn. And there was a point about 5 years ago where I had a friend who started talking about gut health. And interesting enough, the only reason I even paid attention to what she was saying is because I had a daughter that got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And I didn't know what Hashimoto's was at the time, but I heard my friend talking about how she was working on her gut health, and how because of that, she was able to manage the symptoms that she had from Hashimoto. So I started paying attention to what she was saying and learning, and I started asking questions and learning about what she was doing. And in the process, I realized that I needed gut health as well. And so I started getting the nutrients in my body that I needed. And again, I was working from home all these years and sitting at a desk all day. So I had put on some extra weight. But once I started like getting the nutrients in my body and then getting up and moving my body, it just started out, even then, it just started out as like walking around the neighborhood for 10 to 15 minutes and just actually getting up and moving. It's kind of amazing how these bodies we have are built. Like they're amazing. And I think if we really pay attention to what our body is telling us, like if we just take care of it, put the nutrients in it, get up and move, do the things that it's really needing from us, then our bodies heal. And that's what I found. Like through that process, the learning how to do all of that. And again, I just did it a little bit at a time. I feel like sometimes it's really overwhelming, especially when you have like I didn't even change my diet at the beginning, right? It was like I just literally started putting some vitamins in my body and moving, and that was it. And my body I started to like thin out a little bit. I started to have more energy. My stomach aches went away. I was able to go off a lot of the medications that I had. I had no idea the connection between the physical aspect in our body and the mental mood, mindset, all that stuff, the connection between the anxiety and depression and the physical aspect of my body. I did not even realize at that time what the connection was. And so as I started to take care of my body more and learn those, when your body doesn't feel good, I don't think you even have the capacity to understand that you need to change your thoughts and work on emotions and all those kind of things. So it wasn't until I started feeling better physically that I even had that capacity to understand that I needed to work on that stuff. And so for me, the process was that I started feeling better physically, and then I started realizing that I needed to work on my thoughts and my mindset. And then one of the key components, I think, again, in my story, from my perspective, was learning how to let go of some of those emotions that I'd been holding on to. Because even after I changed my mindset and I was focusing on more positive things, and I was realizing that I know there's a lot of realizing that your thoughts cause your feelings, and it's not the circumstances, right, that cause your feelings. It's your thoughts around the circumstances that cause your feelings. And I did coaching on that for a couple of years, and it was so helpful. I felt the shift in a dynamic, even in myself and in my relationship, just from learning those tools. But it wasn't until I learned how to actually, again, reframe or change the patterns in my mind and be able to let go of some of those emotions that I'd been holding on to for years and years and years, that I feel like I was finally able to be in a place where my husband and I were able to have conversations without me just crying. He would just look at me for years and I would just start crying. And now it's a little bit emotional for me because I feel like, I realized it was going to come up like this, but I want to be with him. I feel like for lots of years I was avoiding him. I was avoiding the family. I was not like I was talking about at the beginning, I just having everybody be together and laughing and giggling and me actually being to enjoy that was something that I was missing in the past. Like I remember one time we went, like I said, my husband's father wasn't a member of the church. So when we'd go, he lived down at Lake Havasu for several years. And so we'd go down and visit him, and he had a boat. So we'd go down there, and it was Easter Sunday, and we were spending time with him that weekend. So Easter Sunday, we were on a boat. He was pulling all the kids around in the boat on the tube in the back, and they were loving it. They were laughing and having a good time. And I wasn't happy. It was like, in my mind, I was like, this is not what we're supposed to be doing on Sunday. It's Easter and it's Sunday and we're boating and we're not supposed to be doing that. And I remember being so sad and so upset. And I was just, kind of in my own thoughts at the back of the boat, really sad. And I remember my father-in-law, who was a great guy. I remember him asking me, he said, "Kristen, are you okay?" And I was like, and I said, yes, right? I was like, yeah, fine. But I wasn't. I was irritated. I was bugged that we were there and we were doing something that I didn't feel like we were supposed to be doing. Which when I look back at that now, I'm like, that was so not necessary. Like, it was the same as the circumstances that I have now, where we were all together. My whole family was there. We were doing something fun. We were visiting with my father-in-law, who believes different than we do. And it didn't matter that we were boating on Sunday, right? It's not something that I would typically do every Sunday, again, because I do believe in the Sabbath as a special day, but I'm like, there was nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I was really, really sad that that's what we were doing that day. And understanding that I've been able to go through this process of healing myself physically, my mindset, and clearing out all those emotions. I'm able to have conversations with my husband now that are so good and so loving, right? And we just like to be together. which we're empty nesters. Our kids are grown up. They're gone. It's just the two of us. I am so, so grateful that I was able to go through this healing process so that I can enjoy being with him. Because it would have been miserable if I didn't.
I love that and so appreciate it. And it's so interesting what our brains do to us, right? Like that Easter Sunday. It was a beautiful day, just like you said, but you weren't able to see it. You weren't able to appreciate it. And it's amazing what a few years does to shift and to change and to help things look a little bit differently. I appreciate you sharing that story with us. So, Kristen, if there is somebody listening today who is in your same situation, what would you tell them? What's a takeaway that you would love for them to have before we leave today?
Well, like I said, I think that the first step is probably just paying attention to your thoughts, paying attention to how you react, like just paying attention and not trying to change anything, just actually noticing what's happening, right?
And not judging it,
Because
I would think too,
and
right?
not
Like
judging
not
it.
thinking, oh, I shouldn't
Yeah.
be.
Yes, be curious, like just pay attention and notice. Because when you start noticing how you're reacting and what you're focused on, that's the first step. You have to notice that what's happening. And then reach out for help if you need to, right? Like I feel like for me that's what it was. I don't know that I would have been able to figure it out on my own. I think I did have to have other people help walk me through it because I was so deep. I was so deep in my own stuff that I needed some help. But yeah, just give yourself grace. Give yourself grace to understand and also understand that it's not about fixing anything. I think at first for me it was like I feel like we need to fix our marriage. And then I got to the point where I understood that it wasn't fixing him or it wasn't fixing my marriage, but I thought it was about fixing me. And now I feel like I'm understanding that it's not about fixing me either. There's nothing wrong with any of it. This is the path. It's all about learning, being curious and just learning. And it's really about feeling all those emotions, right? Like sometimes things happen that are sad. Sometimes things happen that do make you mad. There's nothing wrong with feeling sad and feeling hurt and feeling angry. It's about feeling those feelings and learning from them and then moving forward instead of pushing them down, which is what most of us do. We don't think we're supposed to feel it, so we try and avoid it.
Really good at that. Really good.
Then the last thing I would say was just trust, right? Trust and always have hope because it doesn't have to be that way. It can be better.
There's always a big picture that we can't always we don't always recognize. Before we leave, can you share with people how they can connect with you?
Yes, I am on Instagram and Facebook. I actually have 2 different accounts. At Body and Spirit, so body period and period spirit. And on that account, I give a lot of relationship tips and mindset tips. I also have another one called healthy_Kristen. And on that one, I talk a lot about gut health and the importance of, and a lot of the things that you can do to help feel better physically. So I have those 2 accounts.
Awesome. Well, we will link to those in the show notes. And I appreciate you being here today. Inspiring. I like to think of it as inspiring progression because that's really what we all are after is that progression in our life, whether we recognize that's what it is or not. Like we all need that inspiration to continue moving towards that.
Yes.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and on those Instagram accounts, there is a link in my bio where I do have a peace script ebook that you can download that kind of gives you some of the tips of some of the things we've talked about today, and then another one on understanding gut health. If anybody wants to
awesome.
download those
Perfect.
PDFs, yeah.
I'm glad you shared that with us. All right. Well, have a good one, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next time.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.